We're on Daf Peiches Amud Aleph, on the bottom of the Amud, and we'll just review the Gemara Shakli V'Tarya here as far as Rav. We're not going to read it inside, but Rav made a statement that if she got married based on the testimony of two witnesses, lo teitze. And the Gemara says, what are you talking about? If the Baal is still alive, with all due respect to the two Avon, they made a big boo-boo, or worse, they plagiarized. They, what's the word? Not plagiarized. They, what's the word in English to testify falsely? They, perjured, sorry. Thank you so much. They perjure themselves. So now she can remain married to the second husband? That can't be. And the Gemara says that in Eretz Yisrael, they laughed at Rav. Machaku alei b'marav. How could it be that Rav is saying that she could remain married to the second husband when her first husband is alive and he didn't deliver a get, with all due respect to the two witnesses? So let's see if we can figure out the question of the Aruch LaNer. This is on page Vav, bottom right. He says the following: Ef shalom shemishumi guna, if kiu chazal es kiddushay rishon. And this question is predicated on the shita of the Balei HaTosfos. Second. I don't find it right now, but anyway, the Shita of Balei HaTosfos that the Rabbanan will exercise when necessary their authority of Afkinu Rabbanan L'Kiddushin, meaning to annul and void the marriage. So why not say the following? That because of Igun, the Rabbanan said that let's be oker b'mafkia the Kedusha Rishonim, the original Kedusha of the first husband, and they were matir her to get married based on the testimony of two witnesses. So what did she do wrong? I mean, they gave her a license to get married. He quotes Rashi that in the case of Eid Echad, who testified that her husband died, Rashi says they activated Afkinu Rabbanan L'Kiddushin Minei. And the Aruch LaNer answers that let's ask a different question. Why does the Mishnah say that Nisei Shelo B'Reshus Bezdin, which means she didn't need the okay and the license of the Bezdin because they had two Eidim, and then her husband comes and she has to bring a carbon? Why does she have to bring a carbon for having a relationship and intimacy with the second husband? After if they were mafkia the first Kiddushin, then there was no sin at all on her part. She certainly doesn't have to bring a carbon. But in the case of Eid Echad, even though they were mafkia the first Kiddushin, they weren't mafkia the Kiddushin as far as the Knas is concerned, because she misbehaved, and therefore she'll have to bring a carbon. In any event, let's get back to Rav. So Rav says something very strange, that two witnesses testified and she could remain married to the second husband, even though the first husband came alive. That's impossible. Says the Gemara, you know what the scenario of Rav is? We have a case of lo yadinam. Bezdin cannot recognize the first husband. And the Gemara is going to prove in a minute that there is such a possibility that you can't recognize the person. So the Gemara asks the following question: if Rav is talking about a case where we cannot recognize the person, so why, in the case where one aide testifies, and then we say, well, the husband came back alive and takes him, he said, why? I mean, we don't know if the husband's alive. So the Gemara now reinterprets Rav, and we're talking about two sets of eidim, of two witnesses against two witnesses. There are two witnesses that say, we were with the husband from the day that he left on his trip till today. And here he is. He's standing in front of us. And if you two eidim testify that he's gone, and you know that you saw him dead, my fellows, you're making a mistake. You're talking about somebody else who died. But the husband did not die, because we've been with him from the beginning to the end. Now, how could it be that the eidim are accusing the other pair of witnesses that you don't recognize him? Yosef the Amar of Chisda Malanich Yotze Below Chisi B'Sakon Uba B'Chasimas Zakon. So that's why, according to the accusation of the eidim who testify that he's alive and well, and there he is, how could they be believed to claim that the other two eidim are mistaken about his identity? And the answer is, you could make a mistake about the identity of a person. You could know the person for 17 years, as the brothers knew Yosef, and yet they can't recognize him 20 years later because now he's got a beard. Is therefore Shnei Eidim Habayim Lefanenu Lahayt Shezeh HaBaal, and then Shnei Eidim Shezeh Omeid Lefanenu Eino HaBaal. We saw the Baal dead. Is in this case Eino Makirino, so we don't know who's telling the truth. Even though we have the so-called husband standing here in front of us in Bezdin, but we don't know if that's the husband. Maybe it's somebody else. On this case, Rav says, in Masechet Yevamot, she doesn't have to, we don't have to bust up her second marriage. We can leave it as is. Because we do have two eidim who testify that her husband's dead. If, on the other hand, she has only one witness who testifies that her husband is dead, and he claims that this so-called Baal that came in from Medina Sayyam is not really the Baal at all. So if there are two eidim that testify that this is the Baal and he's alive and well, then in such a case, you have two witnesses against one witness. One witness testifies, I saw his dead body, and this is not him. The other two witnesses says, this is him. We recognize him. We know him. Then the one aide doesn't register against the two eidim that he contradicts, and therefore, in this states it. We honestly believe in Paskin that she is still married to the first husband. He's alive and well. And therefore, the second husband is out of the picture. We're going to require a get, but that's only a chumrah because the spectator might misunderstand what's going on. So the Gemara asks, so trey ninu. We have two eidim testifying that this is the Baal. We have two eidim testifying that this is not the Baal. We saw the Baal dead. Is therefore, says the Gemara, Peichesom and Beis, Haba Olel B'Yasham Talui Koi. Right? You have a case where you don't know if you ate chelev or you ate shuman. You have to bring what's called an asham talui. That's chaticha achas mishtei chatichos. Here also, we have a suffix whether or not her husband's alive or not alive. And she had an intimate relation with another man, a second husband, she must bring a korban asham. What's the difference between this case where you have 2 against 2, as far as the identity of the Baal, and the case where you don't know whether it's Chelev or Shuan? He ate it, he's got to bring a korban asham tola. She went in a relationship with her second husband, she has to bring an asham tola. All right, that's going to be. But before we get to Rav Sheshes, on the left column here, the Gemara initially thought that according to Rav, since she got married to the second husband based on the testimony to Eidir, lo teitze, even though the husband is right here in front of our eyes. Asa gabra v'kod, v'at amrit lo teitze. The husband is here in front of us, and you're saying that she can remain married to the second husband? They made fun of Rav. So Tosas asks, the Kevan sha'amru shabayla mes ne'manin umisafek lo teitze. Tosas says we have 1,000 witnesses who are testifying that her husband died. And you're telling me, well, her husband's still alive? How can you create such a suffix? And based on that suffix, say, Misechet Yevamot, against 1,000 witnesses, because trade Kimeya. We have 2 witnesses testifying that her husband died. So the Gemara says, well, her husband is here. He's alive and well. What do you mean he's alive and well? We have 1,000 witnesses that say unanimously he's dead. So honestly, I thought before this question of Tosfos that Bezdin recognizes the husband. We're not talking about some Supreme Court, in Washington, D.C. These are local dayanim. They recognize the guy. He may have gone on a journey for 10 years. I don't know. But that's him. It's not an imposter. Tosfos is not willing to say that. Tosfos says the Torah relied on Adam. The Adam said he died. Are you looking at him? He's an identical twin. He's an imposter. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch movies. This was a theme in many movies. Don't ask me the names of the movies, but somebody showed up and he looked exactly like another person and he played the role. Anybody remember any movies like that? No? So the Adam are testifying that we saw the corpse of the husband. Okay, so you're looking at this guy. This guy's an imposter. Check his body. You'll probably find some sort of a birthmark on his left thigh or something that proves that he's an imposter.
Invasion of the bodies.
Oh, is that
Invasion of the body snatchers.
Oh, I'm already having nightmares. The Tosfos answers that there's something called a davar hanireh v'yadua. There's no such thing as imposters. There's a davar hanireh v'yadua. It's daylight now. It's not nighttime. I see the sun, I see the light. The davar hanireh v'yadua. Bring me 1,000 witnesses to testify that it's night I'll throw them all out. The davar hanira v'yadua. Is lo aya omer Rav. The Gemara says this is impossible that Rav could say that because there are Eidim lo teitze. It's a davar hanira v'yadua. The Eidim are considered to contradict that which we see in front of our eyes as reality. There's a table here. Two Eidim will come in and they'll say, there's no table here. That's not Eidim. It's a davar hanira v'yadua. And now he quotes a tshuva from the Noda B'Yehuda. Tosfos in his kasha said Trei Kemeil. I understand Rav very well. Who's laughing at Rav? Lotates in this case lotates because we have 1,000 witnesses. Says the Noda B'Yehuda, even after Tosfos' final answer, he still accepts the principle that 2 witnesses are the equivalent of 1,000 witnesses. They did not reject their original position. Sheyesh kan trei kemeil. El shesavru shadin nosei shebaofen shadova nira v'yadua lakol teitze. Because it's a davar yadua lakol. Everybody knows it. So what's the significance here of Trei Kemeil? Lamaisa, it doesn't have any significance. That's what it would seem. But the Noda B'Yehuda wants to suggest that in other cases, it may come up, and we need Trei Kemeil, but not in the case where the Trei is against the davar hanira v'hayadu. The Odi says, Kosva Tosfos shetam v'trei trei ein mamidim al cheskas eishes ish u'mishum sheisha daika u'mitzvah. So the daika u'mitzvah knocks off the cheskas eishes ish, and therefore in trei she's allowed to get married, or say she's allowed to get married, but in this case lo teitze im kein kan. Shadova nira v'yadua lakol shabayla chai ein ze mara l'svara shel daiku mitzvah v'shuv yesh la'amida b'cheskas eishes ish v'lochein teitze af shenechshav hasofek kitrei utrei. So Tosfos says that the reason in trade the cheskas eishes ish is completely null and void is because of the principle called isha daika u'mitzvah. Now, in our case, teitze. Why teitze? Since the davar nira v'yadua lakol, so now what we have is, so why is the Noda B'Yehuda so emphatic here that there's no cheskas eishes ish? I mean, we're saying that teitze. Adarabah, if she had a cheskas eishes ish, that would be more of a reason to say teitze. I thought I understood this Noda B'Yehuda, but maybe you could help me with it. Again, he's saying that in a case of trei, we get rid of the cheskas eishes ish. Why? Because of isha daiko mitzvah. Now, in our case of a davar nirav yadua, is ein ze mara l'svar shel take. We still have daiku mitzvah. That would lead us to the conclusion that this is not our husband. So why are we going to say Teitzei? Why not apply the principle of Daiku Mitzvah and say in this case Lo Teitzei? The answer is that this is a suffix. If there's a suffix, we're going to say Lo Teitzei. But here in this case, we're going to say Teitzei. I thought because there's no real suffix. He's saying, or we could say Teitzei because of Cheskes Eishes. I think, if I understand correctly, I hope I'm not oversimplifying the Chidushi and the insight of the Noda B'Yehuda, but I think he's just pointing out that at the end of the day, the reason why they laughed at Rav and they insisted that, of course, she has to get out of the second marriage because her husband is still alive, is not because of trade. In other words, trade would lead us to the conclusion of in this case Lo Teitzei. So why are they making fun of Rav who says in this case Lo Teitzei? But the answer is that this is not a case of trade. It could have been a case of trade, and we would neutralize the Cheskes Eishes Ish and say in this case Lo Teitzei because Isha Daiku Mitzvah. But nevertheless, Tosfos says the reason why we're not going to say trade and in this case Lo Teitzei is for a different reason, because this is not called trade. This is a davar yadua lakol. And the Aiden cannot contradict the davar yadua lakol. Or maybe it'll become a little clearer. Tosfos l'maskana chazru b'hem v'sovrim sheb'chai gavna shadavar nirav yadua lakol ein omrim trei kemei. So again, the Yehuda wants to apply the principle of trei kemei and still insist on a niseis teitzei, despite the fact that there's no cheskes eishes ish because daiku mitzvah neutralizes eishes ish, but because of davar yadua. You can say trei kemei, trei ke'elef, trei kemilyon, it would be irrelevant because of davar yadua. Comes along the shach, he says no. Tosfos is backtracking from his original position, and he holds that in the case of a davar yadua lakol, you don't apply the principle of trei kemei. Ela holchim achamash yadua lakol. We disqualify or ignore the Eidim because the davar yadua lakol. That's the opinion of the Shach. Now, how do we know that it's possible that the Eidim made a mistake about his identity, and this, in fact, is not the culprit, it's not the Baal, but rather an imposter, and we testify that we saw the corpse of the Baals, but based on Yosef. So the Radbaz writes, Ein kavanas ha'gemara she'ef shalahakir b'tvias ayin adam sheyotze below chasimus zakon ukei shavim az-zakon. Don't think that the Gemara is saying that if a man was recognized, was known before he had a beard, he was clean shaven. Now he has a beard, so we cannot recognize him. Shari ma'asim b'chol yom shanu makirim v'gam pshita she'ef shal lispoch al tvias ayin. We do recognize a person even when he grows a beard. And we can certainly rely on the halachic recognition of identification, which is called Vias Ayin. El Kavodas HaGemara Rak Levayer Madua Ha'achim Lo Hikiris Yosef. When the Gemara adds this principle, this piece about Yosef was clean shaven, he didn't have a beard, and now he has a beard, that was just an explanation to justify why the brothers didn't recognize him. So there's no halachic significance to the Haim Lo Hikiru. The Gemara is explaining Haim Lo Hikiru in order to explain why the brothers didn't recognize him. And that's because he grew a beard. But it doesn't mean anything halachic. You cannot reject or be matil safek on testimony based on the fact that Haim Lo Hikiru, because when the Eidim saw him and knew him, he had no beard and now he has a beard. No, there's still to be a sign, even after a person grows a beard. The Gemara is adding this piece about Yosef's brothers to justify and explain how is it that they didn't recognize their own brother. Osim Bamitzia says, Afim Yotza B'Chasim Zakan, Uka'es Toin Echav, Sheina Makiro. We can believe a brother to say, I don't recognize my own brother. Meaning, the brother used to have a beard, now he doesn't have a beard. It goes the other way around as well. And if his brother says, I don't recognize him, and we ask him, what do you mean you don't recognize him? You recognize your brother, but you saw him with a beard. Now there's no beard, so maybe you don't know whether it's your brother or not. No. He would know who his brother is, even if his brother would shave his beard. Ulefi divrei Atosus b'yashiv aruch laner kanes hakoshi shelachora madua gemara me'agemara shem yetzei abal b'chasim hazakan bol lefanenu ein makirno so lo yu ha'edim ha'omrim shu chai ne'monim. Why shouldn't we believe the Edim who say that he's alive? Because he was Yatza B'Chasim Zakon, and now we have someone in front of us who's not wearing a Zakon. So the Adam shouldn't be trusted to say, well, he died. We should assume that we can attribute no reliability, no nemanis at all to the Adam who say he's alive, because here and despite the fact that now he has no beard, because you could recognize someone who you know and you're familiar with a beard even without his beard. Masechet Yevamot b'yotza b'chasim hazaken yitochen v'ein makirno so kevan shenichtana b'dvarim acherim lo kosh atam shekosva gemara she'achi Yosef lo yikiru kevan sheyotza b'chasim hazaken hu kidei levayer es hatam madua achi Yosef lo hikiru es achi. Okay, then, so let's make a note of where we got up to for today. What pages do we have here? We have Zion. That's as far as we got, Zion. All right, so we may need a little bit. So let me wish you a meaningful fast and a good Shabbos. And if Mr. Hashem, we'll get together again on Monday.